So absolutely no rematch, Dana White says, for Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland. The whole world are kind of torn in terms of who actually won that fight. A lot of people are edging it towards Sean Strickland, but Dana White says absolutely not. Not even a hint of a rematch. Some people are banging the drum saying this can only be an Israel Adesanya fight. Some people are talking about UFC 300. And we're also going to get into a very not uncommon fruity response from Israel Adesanya to Dricus Du Plessis becoming the champion. And I'm also going to tuck it in at the very end of this video, Ariel Helwani's attempt to once again stick one to the UFC CEO Dana White. Ariel can't stand this guy. He tries to get one up on Dana White by bringing up some old interviews and old articles and really proving that we're all wrong and we shouldn't like this newfound idea of free speech that Dana White is promoting. Apparently it's since 2016. Coincidentally, that's when everything went wrong, according to Ariel Helwani. So we'll get into that. Before we do, if you could hit like, subscribe and share, I'd really appreciate you. Cheers. So no rematch. We will not have an immediate rematch for Sean Strickland against Dricus Du Plessis as per Dana White. Why? That's the question that's on my lips, is why. There's a train of thought out there from a lot of these ex-fighters and current MMA media guys, and it says that the fans will decide who will face Dricus Du Plessis. So I'm kind of interested to see what sort of fan backlash, if you want to call it that, is going to come off the back of Dana saying not even an idea of a rematch happening here. And even the shill Ariel himself briefly touches on the idea that there could have been a conspiracy here. He was saying that the biggest fight that the UFC can make right now is Dricus Du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. UFC 300 on the way, and these guys might be fit enough to get in there and top that. Who else is going to do it? What is a bigger fight than Dricus Du Plessis and Israel Adesanya? I agree to the extent that this is a huge fight. I'd absolutely love to see this fight, but I'd also love to see Israel Adesanya come back and earn it. Maybe fight Jared Cannonier again, something like that. A lot of people are talking about Khamzat Chimaev or Israel Adesanya for the next title shot. None of these boys have earned it. Come on, like, what are we doing here? So are we in a position now where we believe that 3 days out from this fight that was razor thin, that we are all just kind of dismissing the idea of a rematch? Sean Strickland doesn't deserve it apparently, and now we're all supposed to regurgitate what the mainstream media are talking about in terms of Khamzat Chimaev is pissed off with Dana White because he didn't get a title shot, and Israel Adesanya mightn't be fit enough to come back at UFC 300, but that's definitely the biggest fight that we can make right now. If it isn't Conor McGregor, it's Israel Adesanya. I've heard people say it. Ariel said it last night. Is that where we are now, or are the fans going to be vocal and say, I think there should be a rematch?
And the rivalry and the history, it is right there. This fight, you're telling me they put that at the top of the bill. Does anyone scoff? Does anyone say this isn't worthy? Does anyone say no thank you? Does anyone say this hasn't lived up to the hype? It's right freaking there.
Are you serious?
There's only one answer. There's only one guy. They've not fought each other. It was supposed to be Izzy defending against him. Now there's the role reversal and it's Izzy chasing him. It is right freaking there for UFC 300, and it's amazing how that works.
Ariel makes a couple of decent points here in terms of what this fight would actually be, and as I said, I'm interested in seeing it. I was interested in seeing it before Dricus got injured, but I think it's a little bit unfair to kind of throw the blanket statement out there that everybody wants to see Israel come back and get this title shot. That's a little bit of a broad blanket statement that's just kind of fired out there, and when we really dig down and think about it, we realize that, okay, like, you know, he gets whooped by Pereira, gets an automatic rematch, wins the belt back, then loses it to Strickland, then gets another automatic rematch. Very interesting when we think about it in terms of the UFC as an organization and what sort of image they like to project. Ariel goes on to say at the end of this video that not many people at the UFC besides Dana White, who he can't stand and loves to tear down no matter what anyway, he goes on to say here that a lot of the most powerful people within the organization, within the UFC, actually came to Sean Strickland after his rant last week with the reporter, we'll call him. Ariel said that a lot of powerful people came to Sean Strickland and said, listen, you can't say that. Absolutely not. You can't actually talk in them terms.
I do know for a fact that members of the UFC went and spoke to Sean Strickland's team about this. Didn't reprimand him. Didn't say you're going to be punished. Didn't say, but they'll be like, yo. And look at the rest of the week. It didn't really go there, right? And I don't think that's a coincidence.
And he actually says that that's why for the rest of the week, Sean Strickland was curtailing his speech that he was restricted, that he had a muzzle on him almost. So the idea of every news outlet, every YouTube content creator out there talking about Dana White being this bastion of free speech, that they are all kind of deluded, because there's people just below Dana that hate what Sean Strickland said, that hates the fact that Dana promotes free speech, and that actually stuck a muzzle on Sean Strickland. So if we think about it in them terms and we believe what Ariel Helwani is saying, then the conspiracy becomes a lot more tangible in terms of, okay, a razor thin decision the other night, and it goes the way of Dricus, who's a little bit more refined, who's a little quieter, who isn't going to say that stuff that Sean is going to say. And also it sets up a fight for Israel Adesanya to come back, take the belt back, and it all looks brilliant in terms of demographics and the type of people that these powerful people that are not Dana White apparently love. And this is the same type of rhetoric that Ariel goes on to say that it kind of changed in the UFC around 2016. We know there was a big event and a change of power in the US in 2016, and a lot of people feel like freedom of speech returned, and the option to actually say how you feel returned, and not have to follow party political lines, not to have to mind your P's and Q's with every single interview you did. And he talks about people being punished before. Listen, it's happened here. Let me pull up this article. It's happened here again. Let me pull up that article. And it was all done in a way to show you that watch how before 2016, we were able to shut people down. People weren't allowed to express how they feel. So by default of that statement in itself, we controlled the narrative. And if we're talking about power structures, we're talking about extremes, left and right extreme, then we have to look at it from a left and a right perspective, right? Before 2016, we had this extreme left-leaning progressiveness that infected every piece of media. It infected all our sports, on our music. All we have to do is look at the likes of pop culture and see how that got destroyed because freedom of speech wasn't allowed. But this is a better time for Ariel. This is a better time when we were able to chase down fighters and suspend them and to fire them and to punish them for what they said. This is a better time, apparently. Sorry, went off on a little bit of a rant there. So what I'm trying to say is it's not too much of a stretch to think that the UFC, the higher-ups who aren't Dana White, like the idea of Israel getting it back. They like the idea of lipstick, of pink hair, of nail varnish, and plenty of fruitiness that just sits better with sponsorships, that just sits better when you go to places like Canada, where these type of questions wouldn't have been asked of Israel Adesanya because he would never speak out on something like that because he's probably part of that community. But there was an interesting comment that I came across yesterday, and they spoke about this woke activist reporter who got put in his place by Sean Strickland. Wouldn't you love to see this reporter ask this very same question of Habib or Islam Makhachev? Because we know how they sit and how they feel, but I don't think they would ask that question. So they were looking for an easy target, they were looking for someone easy to get shut down, and Ariel supports it. When we look at UFC 300, Dricus versus Israel Adesanya, I'm not sure whether that's the fight that the fans want. I'm not sure whether it's unfair to say that the UFC might want that fight and they might want their boy back in the gold. Maybe it's not too much of a stretch. And to play into that, this is the way Israel responded to Dricus the other night.
To you, my African brother, Dricus Du Plessis. I'm actually not like legit, I'm happy for him. I actually like his story and whatnot, but he still did what he did, and I'm still gonna test that ass. Hey, yo! What? What the fuck?
So congrats to Dricus Du Plessis. He still did what he did, whatever that means. And I still want to test that ass. It's Israel Adesanya. This is the guy who must have that belt back. This is the face of UFC. This is the guy who has so many defenses of his title. Always showed up. This is the guy. He wants to test that ass.
Yo, shout the season, man.
And I say give Sean Strickland a rematch. That's what I say. Let me know your thoughts down below.